The Zixith Dominion's delegation arrived with the arrogance of a species that had seen countless civilizations bend before them. Their empire spanned hundreds of star systems, and every diplomatic meeting followed the same pattern: offer terms disguised as generosity, watch the weaker species accept, and absorb them into the fold. Humanity would be no different. The negotiation chamber was grand by human standards, minimalist by Zixith expectations. The alien representatives took their seats, their ornate garments shimmering under the artificial lights. Across from them sat a single human. No guards, no advisors. Just one man in a plain suit, hands folded neatly on the table, expression unreadable. The Zixith ambassador, a towering figure with deep violet skin, leaned forward. His voice, though smooth through translation software, carried the weight of centuries of conquest. "This is a momentous occasion for your kind," he began. "The Dominion extends an offer of protection and prosperity. In exchange, you will integrate into our structure, militarily, economically, and culturally. A partnership, one that has benefited many before you." There was no need to elaborate on what refusal meant. The unsaid consequences were a language all species understood. The Zixith had annihilated worlds that failed to accept their generosity. The human remained still, eyes locked on the ambassador. Then, after a moment of silence, he smiled. "Before we proceed, let's make one thing clear. We don't negotiate the way you do." The ambassador's expression remained composed, but a flicker of confusion passed through his secondary eyelids. He leaned back slightly, studying the human's face for any trace of uncertainty. He found none. "You misunderstand," the ambassador said, voice measured. "This is not a discussion of method. It is a matter of outcome. We are offering stability and advancement. War would be unfortunate." The human reached down, unlatched the briefcase at his side, and opened it with a quiet click. Inside, a compact device hummed softly, its surface adorned with a simple digital interface. He pressed a button. A holographic projection flickered to life above the table. The Zixith delegation tensed. This was not the display of submission they had anticipated. The projection showed planetary schematics, Earth, yes, but not just Earth. Distant, silent shapes drifting in space. Submerged constructs resting beneath oceans. Unmanned orbital platforms hidden within the cold void. The unmistakable outlines of nuclear arsenals, their payloads locked, primed, and waiting. The human's voice remained calm. "You assume we fear destruction. That we will surrender because we have less. But that's not how we operate. You see, we don't just plan for victory. We plan for every outcome." He gestured to the display, zooming in on a cluster of warheads stationed beyond Earth's orbit. "This is what you missed. We don't fight wars with the hope of survival. We fight with the certainty that, if we fall, we are not falling alone." Silence settled over the chamber. For the first time in the Zixith's long history, an inferior species had placed something far worse than defiance on the table. They had placed finality. The ambassador's mandibles tightened. His aides shifted, exchanging glances, their confidence visibly fracturing. This was not the response they had anticipated. Conquered species pleaded, bargained, looked for a way to survive. But this human, this solitary representative, spoke as if extinction was a calculated move, not a consequence. "You are bluffing," the ambassador said finally, though the certainty in his voice wavered. The human exhaled slowly, as if dealing with a child who refused to understand simple arithmetic. He tapped the interface again. The projection shifted, displaying new data, targeting solutions, encrypted command pathways, silent activation codes embedded in redundant systems across the planet. "Try me," the alien aides whispered furiously now, their skin flushing with unease. The ambassador's hands curled into fists, his composure eroding. He had seen species break under the Dominion's rule, but never had he felt the creeping realization that the ones across the table might drag his entire empire into the abyss with them. The human studied the alien's silence before speaking again, voice unwavering. "We knew you'd come here thinking we were another stepping stone in your expansion. That you could push, and we'd bend. But you don't understand what happens when you back a species like us into a corner. The projection changed one last time. This time, the targets weren't Earth. They were Zixith colonies, command centers, fuel depots, vital arteries that held their empire together. Press us, and we'll break the board before we let you win the game. The ambassador's breath came slower now, shoulders stiff. The delegation sat in uneasy silence. For the first time, the Zixith Dominion had encountered a species that negotiated with annihilation as an acceptable outcome. The ambassador sat motionless, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a suffocating shroud. The aides no longer whispered. There was nothing left to say. The human had made their position unmistakably clear. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion faced an opponent that did not fear them. A species that had no illusions of victory, only the absolute certainty that if war came, it would leave no survivors on either side. "What do you want?" the ambassador finally asked, his voice quieter now, stripped of arrogance. The human closed the briefcase with deliberate calm. "Simple. You leave. You never return. And you inform your superiors that this planet is off limits. Because if you don't, we won't wait for another meeting." The words carried no bravado, no threats, just a simple statement of fact. The ambassador's mind raced through the possibilities. The Dominion's fleet was vast, its armies unstoppable, but what good was conquest if it ended in mutual ruin? Slowly, stiffly, he inclined his head. A diplomatic gesture, though one that felt hollow now. "Very well," he said. The human gave a small, almost polite nod. "Smart choice." As the delegation rose to leave, the ambassador cast one last glance at the man across the table. No rage, no desperation, just quiet certainty. The Dominion had spent centuries believing power came from superior force. Today, they learned it also came from the willingness to lose everything to ensure your enemy lost more. When the Zixith warship departed Earth's orbit, a single message was transmitted back to their command. "Do not engage. The humans are not like the others.